been a great growing season here on the edge of the Moree Plains in northern New South Wales.
Very timely rains, very fortunate. They held off just enough to get all our crop in and, it's been sort of steady gentle rain ever since. So, yeah, it's been a good start.
In a few weeks, this spray unit will be replaced with rolling headers and chaser bins. But this fourth-generation farmer, and relatively new dad, is thinking well beyond this year's harvest.
I think the legacy thing is heavily tied to agriculture. Every large farming family you talk to, they always talk about, passing on to the next generation. And of course, that's our plan here as well, to do that. So, yeah, you don't want to be handing down a degraded asset or, an asset that's not profitable, not manageable.
Ensuring future generations can continue to produce food from the land is at the heart of sustainability in agriculture. While it's something Jock Tonkin's continually working on in beef and crop production, he's now setting out with a group of like-minded growers to show their customers exactly how.
I think sometimes farming can be painted in a bad light, and I think 99 or more % of farmers are doing the best they can with the tools at their disposal. Everyone tries to be as efficient as they can, and what we're doing is just measuring that and providing that to the end user.
And in the case of this barley crop, that end user is part of Australia's more than $8 billion beer manufacturing sector. Australia's on track to produce something like 55 million tonnes of winter crops this year, and the growers here are keen to have their produce stand out. Not only are they chasing quantity and quality, but for the first time they're trying to prove that it's sustainably produced. How long could it be before we're drinking this?
The quickest turnaround could be 6 weeks.
Wow. Jock's neighbour, Stuart Tighe, is co-founder of the Pure Grain Network, acting as a conduit between growers and customers. He says those customers are increasingly asking for more information about ESG credentials.
Environmental, social and governance is what the ESG stands for, and they're really metrics that help a business be more sustainable, because you have to be across all those areas.
Metrics that need to be verifiable. The E for environment could represent things such as water use, greenhouse gas emissions, fertiliser use or biodiversity. The G for governance could mean ensuring compliance with anti-slavery regulations.
And then you have the social side, so what's the local spend or diversity of your employees.
And for his business, it's making financial sense.
We've actually just financed 2 headers on our equipment finance loan at a 1% reduction to the standard rate. So that in itself is a really big number on $1 million header. We've been able to prove that we've met some credentials that financier was after.
Stuart's working with growers from across the network so that the crop currently in the ground can be sold with verifiable data relating specifically to ESG metrics tailored to the customer's needs. In this case, a major brewer.
This will be the first time they're actually measuring, on-farm metrics to this level and actually able to report on what's happening. So we're really excited about what we'll learn. I'm sure we'll learn things that we didn't expect, and we'll have to course correct and pivot on what we need to focus on. But that's the beauty of learning.
Dave Engel procures ingredients from around the globe for Asahi, the beverages giant behind Great Northern, Carlton Draft, VB and Bolter beers, as well as soft drinks, Pepsi, Gatorade and Schweppes.
That's a long head, Dave, look at that. Yep. That is a whopping head.
He's regularly been travelling to northern New South Wales to meet with growers.
That's 19 aside.
This region produces malting barley for Australia's largest brewery at Yatala, south of Brisbane. Asahi has committed to reducing its Scope 3, or supply chain emissions, by 30% by 2030.
And what that means is all of our suppliers need to effectively help us reduce their emissions because, their emissions are ultimately ours.
He says the commitment's been driven by shareholders in the publicly listed Japanese company, as well as its customers and consumers.
Number one, there's kind of the stick, right, the legislative requirements. So more and more governments are expecting us to be able to report on what we're doing, and over time I think that's going to also move into setting targets and expectations on us.
While not all ingredients in Asahi's products have the capability to provide verifiable data, he sees it as an increasing trend.
I think more and more we just see it as it's a ticket to ride. It's a price of entry more and more in the marketplace.
We know a number of value chains are setting ESG targets, have an entire ESG frameworks in place, which is coming regardless. International climate-related financial disclosures is legislated in many countries, including Australia.
We get to the grains, the cropping industry.
Professor Richard Eckhardt is from the Primary Industries Climate Challenges Centre at the University of Melbourne. He recently spoke at a food security conference in Canberra about the role of ESG to balance biodiversity conservation, food security and greenhouse gas emissions.
Does it mean to say agriculture has to be squeaky clean on all of those? I don't think that's possible. And so it ends up being a balancing act. I'll give you an example. If you're a cropping business in Western New South Wales with 2 kilometres of cleared vegetation so the GPS-guided tractor can do its thing, not a lot of biodiversity, but very low greenhouse gas emissions. If you're a Northern Territory rancher, a cattle producer, you don't even know where the cows are, let alone how many there are, let alone the termites producing more methane than the cows. But you've got lots of biodiversity.
While reporting on ESG might increase access to capital, he thinks it's unlikely it will see farmers paid more for their produce.
I think, unfortunately, these all end up being expectations rather than a premium.
I would love to see farmers getting paid a premium for it, but in all of the global markets that I went to, nobody's paying. I didn't even see intent. And in fact, when I asked about it, they were like, oh, no, it's just a licence to do business.
Catherine Marriott spent much of the past 2 years travelling and studying the implications of ESG in agriculture as a Nuffield scholar.
I hate saying I'm a sustainability consultant, and I hate it when people say I'm a sustainability consultant because it comes with a connotation of being left-leaning and green and compliance. And sustainability to me means having a long-standing business over time that's got longevity, which involves multiple pillars like economics, environment, people, animal welfare, that sort of thing. And I think that, that's what sustainability is. It just is good business sense. It's good business over the longer term.
She says Australia's well placed to trade in a market motivated by sustainability.
So Australian grain producers are the most efficient from a carbon emissions perspective of anyone in the world. And that's because we don't have subsidies.
To do that, growers need to measure what they're managing.
We've got to get better at telling that story to the market.
If it's easy, everyone would do it.
Which brings us back to the Moree Plains.
If you can make your product slightly different, decommoditising the commodity, then often you can add a value or get a premium or do something that brings value to your business because of it.
About 4 years ago, Stuart turned 800 hectares of this farm, Dimboola, into a trial site to help growers in the Pure Grain network meet their customers' needs. Brooke Sawyer oversees its operations.
We have 19 trials, 286 different treatments, all at a commercial scale is incredibly unique. And every single one of our plots is really about reducing our emissions, building carbon in the soil and shifting that dial, a test bed for improving our water use efficiency, our water capture, improving our soil quality.
And in terms of emissions, it's starting from a good baseline.
We are 15% lower than the national average, but you've got to understand too that, comparatively our farming system is so different to, say, Western Australia or South Australia.
Yeah, I was going to say, she's helped create the network's framework of indicators by which ESG data can be measured and reported.
I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not an easy thing to do, especially because we've made that commitment to ensure that every metric that we provide is fully verifiable.
Asahi doesn't only buy barley from the Pure Grain network, and the network doesn't only supply Asahi. Today, some of the growers have met at the pub to find out more about what it's seeking and perhaps sample the end product.
I think it's a great achievement that we've been able to, a group of growers, as us, been able to collaborate with Australia's largest brewer to agree on a set of metrics and the way that the ESG should be reported.
More than 90% of Asahi's emissions come from its suppliers, including grain growers. Malt accounts for about 7% and barley, half of that.
Doesn't sound like a lot, but when we've got the targets that we've got to really drive emissions across the supply chain, that's pretty hard.
These growers will provide data to Asahi on 21 ESG metrics, including their farm's emissions, crop rotations, area of protected habitat, and compliance with modern slavery.
Like modern slavery, which sounds like a third world problem. It's not a third world problem. There are 30,000 people in Australia working in modern slavery conditions.
For Jock, who's already trialling natural fertilisers to reduce a reliance on emissions-heavy synthetic fertiliser and is recording his farm inputs, it's a no-brainer.
If end users are wanting this data, I don't see there's any harm for us, in providing that to them.
In September, the National Farmers Federation will release its latest iteration of the Australian Agriculture Sustainability Framework. The federal government's also promising to launch its plans for agriculture to help Australia become net zero by 2050. And with trade talks to the European Union ongoing, regulators have a keen eye to sustainability in ag. But these growers aren't waiting.
No, I don't think anyone really wants to be more regulated. I think we are trying to be the masters of our own destiny a bit rather than be told what to do. I don't think any farmer really enjoys being told what to do.